Hi, it's the morning of Saturday, June 8th, 2024, and this is Political Dharma with Alan Zundel. I've been covering the presidential campaign here in the United States from the standpoint of voters who are not interested in either major party candidate, Donald Trump or Joe Biden, and I've been covering their alternatives, the leading of which seem to be, at this point, independent candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's also pursuing the nomination of several minor parties, including his own We the People Party, where you can get that on the ballot, and the Green Party with Jill Stein as their nominee. She's now said that she has enough delegates from the states in the Green Party to get their nomination. And finally, Chase Oliver, who was recently nominated as the presidential candidate of the Libertarian Party. So I've got something to say in each of those areas in this show, primarily that Kennedy is advancing in his ballot access, which may help him get into the presidential debate coming up later in June, and that the Green Party seems to be unifying around their candidate, Jill Stein, but the Libertarian Party seems to be dividing over its candidate, Chase Oliver. So Green Party moving forward, Libertarian Party seemingly descending into factionalization. We'll see if Oliver can overcome those hurdles to actually make the Libertarian Party some kind of compelling force. As far as the other candidates, independents, socialists, other small, very small parties, I don't think they're going to have much of an impact. And since I can't cover them all, unless they do something really surprising, I'm going to transition from giving them airtime at all. So, all right, let's start with, one other thing. At the end of the show, I'll have something to say about the Democratic Party deciding to go forward with this plan to nominate Joe Biden by an online virtual nomination process, voting process with its delegates, rather than actually at the convention, which will be held in August. It's unnecessary, but why are they doing it? So I'll have some opinions on that at the end of the show as well. So let's jump forward here and see what's happening with the Kennedy campaign in the state of Minnesota. They said they turned in 3,300 signatures to get on the ballot, which they think is more than sufficient. I think they needed about 2,000, so this would represent almost 2 times it, although I think the campaign said almost 3 times, so I'm not sure, maybe they got the We the People Party on, not sure. But they said they turned in plenty enough signatures, and then secondarily, in the state of Florida, the Secretary of State announced that it has recognized the Reform Party of Florida as ballot qualified. Now, this is important because that party nominated Kennedy as its presidential candidate just a week or two ago, and at the time it didn't have ballot access because it had lost it 2 years ago due to failing to file some financial information. But apparently they were able to rectify that problem, and now they have gotten Kennedy on the ballot in the state of Florida, which is a very big state with a lot of electoral votes. So let me come back to my face here. And what's this presage for Kennedy's advance here? Now, to get into the presidential debate, CNN set some rules in conjunction with the Trump and Biden campaigns, and this was primarily devised to keep Kennedy out of the debate, I believe, and it seems pretty apparent. They said that a candidate has to get at least 15% voter support in a national public opinion poll from some company that that CNN has named, and Kennedy's campaign says it's already qualified for 3 polls. They just need 1 more in the next couple of weeks. The deadline for meeting these requirements is June 20th, which is a little less than 2 weeks from now. So they're close to meeting that. But the other criterion is that they have to get on the ballot in enough states to show that they could get a hypothetical majority in the Electoral College, which would be the magic number of 270 electoral votes. That means 270 represents more than half the electoral votes so they could win an election. If nobody gets that, it goes to the House of Representatives. But if somebody gets a majority in the Electoral College in November, they actually count them after November. But anyway, they would be the winner. So with the Florida and Minnesota states under his belt, Kennedy now has 278 Electoral College votes between all those states. Now, in the state of Nevada, there's currently a lawsuit because the elections officials in Nevada said they weren't going to accept Kennedy's signatures because he didn't file with the name of his vice presidential candidate. So the Kennedy campaign brought a lawsuit against the state of Nevada, and that's unresolved as of yet. So even if I exclude Nevada as being an iffy case at this point, the Kennedy campaign with Florida and Minnesota still has 272 electoral college votes among those states, so it should qualify for the debate, right? No, wrong, because CNN is saying that it's not enough to have met the requirements of gathering the signatures. You actually have to have the states certify that those signatures are genuine and that he's had sufficient and all that. Now, the Kennedy campaign hasn't even turned in the signatures yet in a lot of those states, and one of my viewers asked why that is. The one reason I've heard from the campaign is that they're waiting to turn them in to closer to the deadline, so there's less time for outside groups to bring legal challenges against those signatures and the acceptance of those signatures, because states are going to have to determine who's going to be on the ballot at a certain point before the November election. So they're trying to shorten the time between when they turn in their signatures for examination and when the state actually has to decide who's going to be on the ballot. Shorten the time so they don't have so many lawsuits. That's what they say. So as far as the state of New York, now, what did I say? Did I say that even if you just include the states, I think I didn't say this yet, even if you include just the states where Kennedy is assured a place on the ballot, unless there's a legal challenge that actually works somewhere, but through the certification of certification of signatures in that state or the nomination of a ballot qualified political party, Kennedy will be on the ballot in 9 states with 168 electoral votes. Now, it's even possible in the next couple of weeks that Kennedy could get on the ballot in more states. And of course, he's going to get the signatures in more states in the next couple of weeks, the rate he's going. But if he gets the nomination of particular parties in particular states, or he gets some of his signatures certified early, he could well be on his, he could well meet the criteria for CNN, and then we'll see what they say after that. That's going to be a tougher path to row, but if he gets even close to that 270 with enough states in which he's guaranteed a place on the ballot, he can make a very strong case to the public, at least, and maybe to the Federal Elections Commission, that he should have been in that debate and it was illegally stacked against him, against Federal Elections Commission's rules that you have to treat every party with equal objective criteria when you're staging a presidential debate. So that's where he's at with the ballot access. Now, in the state of New York, that process of challenging his place on the ballot is going on. He is in an article, taking me a while to get it on the screen here, in an article from the San Diego Herald Tribune, which was taken from the New York Times. There is a group called Clear Choice, which is backed by Democrats, and they're funded, and they have Democratic operatives within that organization. They have brought over a dozen challenges, complaints against Kennedy's application to be on the ballot in New York, including one in which they say he lied on his application by saying that he lives in the state of New York, that's his legal residence. Now, however, on the other hand, the State Board of Elections said that it's not within their purview to determine where somebody actually resides. If they want to challenge his residency, they'll have to take that through the courts. So at least on that one score, they're assured a place. But they also have a lot of other challenges that they're making to the Kennedy campaign, and we don't know yet how those are going to pan out in the examination by the Board of Elections. So kind of iffy in the state of New York, and it's going to be that way in all these other states as well. Democrats are actively seeking and bringing legal challenges, actively seeking to knock him off the ballot in states where he's already got on the ballot. That is the Democratic Party that is telling you that it's fighting for democracy, trying to kick somebody off the ballot under the pretense that it's just trying to make sure everybody follows the law. You can judge for yourself. So now, speaking of the state of New York and getting on the ballot, Kennedy campaign turned in 3 times as many signatures as they needed in New York, even though New York was had changed its requirements, I think about 2 years ago, make it much, much harder for somebody to get on the ballot. And we can see that reflected in this story from Ballot Access News. The story is near the bottom there. You can see the headline if you're watching this in video form. I think I sized it so that the source, Ballot Access News, could be seen at the top, but the article is way down here on the bottom, saying that the New York State Board of Elections this week said that the Green Party, the Libertarian Party, and Cornel West with his Justice for All Party all failed to meet the signature requirements to get on the ballot in the state of New York, which highlights how successful the Kennedy campaign was in achieving that milestone. Let's segue then from Kennedy's advance in ballot access and his chances of getting in the presidential debate to the Green Party, because Jill Stein, the candidate of the Green Party, who says she's already gotten enough delegates from the state party conventions to become the nominee, had a post on her video, a video post in Facebook, giving her take on their failure to get on the ballot. Let's take a listen to what she had to say. I think it's very interesting.
I really want to tell you that you changed the world in New York. What you did is nothing short of miraculous. You came up with 42,000 signatures. We got 10 times more signatures than all the other grassroots campaigns, including the Libertarians, who have never failed to get on the ballot before. They have been on all 50 states in each of the last 2 presidential elections. So they have never failed. And you know how many signatures they got? Somewhere less than 4,000, and we got 42,000. Just let that sink in. What you did is amazing. Whatever you think about what happened in New York, the requirement was absolutely outrageous and illegitimate, and we're challenging it in court. At the end of the day, we can always resort to a write-in campaign if we have to do that.
The Libertarian is generally the strongest party. It's the biggest third party in the United States. But there, Jill Stein is saying that her activists in the Green Party and supporters of her candidacy have gotten about 10 times the signatures that the Libertarian Party did, and came pretty close to meeting the minimum threshold for the signatures required. Again, New York 2 years ago changed the signature requirements from 15,000 to 45,000 without even extending the deadline to get these signatures in. So a lot more signatures in the same period of time, which shows that Stein is very much rallying her troops behind her. She's a widely popular candidate in the Green Party, I would say, from my experience. In her last 2 presidential campaigns in 2012 and 2016, she got a higher percentage of the vote than any other Green Party presidential candidate since Ralph Nader back in 2000, when they were really just getting the party off the ground. So she's a strong candidate, and the Green Party is rallying behind her, which also shows in another area, which is that the Green Party has gotten near to their goal of getting on the ballot in Nevada, which has a high signature requirement, and they turned in their signatures and said they think they're going to be able to get on the ballot. Now, that hasn't been verified yet, but that shows how well that party is doing, and I think they may even be stronger than the Libertarian Party this time around, especially what I'm going to show you about the Libertarian Party in the next few seconds. So, what's happening in the Libertarian Party? As I said in a previous episode, and I've been talking about for a while now, they had their nominating convention 2 weeks ago, or a little over a week ago. I forget exactly when now. I'm losing track of time because I'm moving and doing a lot of other things. But the Libertarian Party nominated Chase Oliver after 7 rounds of voting at their convention. But now the aftermath is coming due here. Let's take a look at a few articles here. The Montana Libertarian Party has rejected Chase Oliver's nomination, and they're urging the National Committee of the Libertarian Party to suspend his candidacy and replace him. Now, they don't say who they're asking to replace him by, at least in this article. You might suspect that it's Robert F. Kennedy Jr., because last week I reported that a group called Libertarians for Kennedy was trying to promote a scheme to have the Libertarian Party's National Committee suspend the Oliver nomination and then replace it with a joint nomination of states can do Kennedy, where that would be advantageous to them in building, remaining in their ballot access, getting enough votes for ballot access in future elections, or other states where they want to help the Oliver campaign, so they could choose from either. But this is not necessarily so if we look at what's going on in other places. For example, in the state of Colorado, the chair of the Libertarian Party says she's going to support Donald Trump, the Republican candidate, in the 2024 election. So what is going on there? There seems to be a grassroots campaign to get rid of Chase Oliver, their official nominee that was already chosen, and get people to vote for Donald Trump. Let's take a look at another one here, which is that one was from the Independent Political Report, those last two reports, which is, again, is a good source on information about independent candidacies and third parties. But in the Third Party Watch, George Phillips reports that a party is emerging called Liberal Party USA. And if you look at the highlighted place there, this is apparently driven by former Libertarian Party supporters or members who are moving away from the organization. Now, that means that there's a lot of libertarians unhappy with the direction of the Libertarian Party, so they've been looking for a different vehicle to express their views through. So what does all this mean for the Libertarian Party now? As I've said in previous episodes, there is a group within the Libertarian Party called the Mises Caucus who have some libertarian views in some areas, and their views in other areas have been controversial within the party, particularly what some are calling the anti-woke agenda. And I'll get to that in a minute, exactly what that entails. Some of the people in the Mises Caucus deny that that's the case. So it looks to me kind of like my instinct is that Republican operatives have been working through the Mises Caucus, maybe with some knowing support, maybe with some unknowing support, in order to divide the party and get it off the ballot in states, get their candidate off the ballot in states where it might pose a problem to Donald Trump. Now, what do I have to back that up? A few other things, but this is mostly speculation on my part, but there's some evidence that points in that direction. Let's look at their chair, Angela McArdle, who had been instrumental in getting Trump to appear to speak at the Libertarian Convention and who was supporting a candidate other than Chase Oliver. Here in the Third Party Watch, the headline, this is again from George Phillies. I think I said George Phillips before because I don't have my glasses on, but George Phillies in the Third Party Watch says that McArdle is endorsing Chase Oliver. Now, that's not entirely accurate. She did a live stream where she talked about the negative response to the Chase Oliver nomination and what she has to say about it. She didn't actually say she was endorsing him. What she said is that she's not going to badmouth Oliver and his running mate, and she will endorse him and support him in blue states where his candidacy could hurt Joe Biden. But in red states, she said she encourages state parties to determine for themselves whether or not to put Oliver on the ballot, because she thinks that Donald Trump has been responsive to libertarian requests, so that between Biden and Trump, she would like to see Trump prevail. So she's talking openly about supporting their official nominee. This is the chair of the party saying they support their official nominee when he hurts Biden, but not when he hurts Trump. Now, she went on to say that she mentioned Robert F. Kennedy Jr. She said he simply entered too late into the process to be able to gain much support in the official balloting. Apparently people did not see his candidacy as being serious, so they didn't take him seriously. But in the party, she and the Mises Caucus, which she's a main component of, favored an entirely different candidate, Dave Smith, who dropped out at the last minute. And then they settled on Michael Rechtenwald, who didn't have the same breadth of support within the party. But she said Rechtenwald opponents were able to get delegates through the credentialing process when they shouldn't have been. And then it took 7 rounds of voting to get to the final round, which had to be delayed from Sunday to Monday. And many of the Mises-aligned delegates left on Monday before the final rounds of voting. And she mentioned that there were a lot of none of the above in the final round of voting. Let's take a look at the actual results of that. Coming up here, so as you see, Chase Oliver got about 61% of the final vote, and none of the above got about 36.5% of the vote. So a little over a third for none of the above, or NOTA, N-O-T-A. In Third Party Watch again with George Feliz, he says recent Libertarian News, this was published on June 5th, so a few days ago, said there's a new web page called NOTA 300 at nota300.com. The 300, I presume, refers to the movie 300, which was based on the Spartans. 300 Spartans guarded Sparta against the Persian army, which vastly outnumbered the Spartans by blocking them up at a pass in the mountains. This happened around 500 BC, so 500 years before the time of when Jesus supposedly walked the earth. Anyway, a long time ago, they made a movie of this story about the Spartans called 300. So NOTA 300, I assume they're comparing themselves to these Spartans who were trying to guard against the enemy, and NOTA, of course, refers to none of the above. So they're trying to get their candidate, the official candidate, Chase Oliver, out of the picture in order to replace him with nobody on the ballot. Now, who's going to be advantaged in that case? I'll get back to that, and I've already hinted at that. Here is their website, NOTA 300, and as you can see, there's a picture of Chase Oliver with his eyes and mouth blurred out, creating a somewhat disturbing picture like you often see in horror movies, meaning, he's like he speaks lies, I guess, and can't see the truth or something, but it's a distorted picture of Chase Oliver. And also on that website, there was an interesting video. Let me get back to my face once again for your viewing pleasure. So they had a video on that was very revealing. And I don't know who's behind this website, but clearly their point is to promote having nobody on the Libertarian ballot rather than the official nominee being on the ballot in the various states where they actually have ballot access at this point. Not sure they're going to be able to rally the troops to get beyond what they have now, which is around 30-something, 36, I forget exactly, but they're probably not going to get the 50 states they've had in the past since they lost New York, and they may not be able to make it in other states as well. Let's take a look at this video that was on that NOTA 300 website, because it'll give you a flavor of at least some of the party, or people who are trying to influence the party were trying to convey with this.
Would you drop your kids off at a drag queen story hour and come back an hour later?
Would you drop your kids off in a movie? Yeah.
We are just surrounded by such scumbag, duplicitous pieces of fucking shit. And all we're looking for is a little honesty.
It just so happens that Chase's positions comport perfectly with mainstream Democratic Party orthodoxy.
The Libertarian Party, with this move, in supporting open borders and vaccine mandates,
You done messed up, Aaron!
have just declared to the American people they are non-viable.
Oh, you see, that was a very negative ad, the kind you would see in a political campaign from either major party, but the Republicans seem to specialize in ones that attack other candidates as being somehow sexually degenerate or in alignment with sexual degenerates. They were raising issues like drag queen story hours and making Chase Oliver is openly gay and making his sexual orientation part of the complaint, at least in a subtle way. All right, I don't know how subtle it was, but not overtly attacking him, but making that part of their visual and auditory implication here is that there's something wrong with being gay. And also mandatory masking. Now, as I understand libertarian principles, it's about individual freedom. So number one, you should be free to dress in any way you want to, in drag or not. You should be free to allow your children to see people in drag and read a story to them in a library. You should be free to determine whether you want a mask or not. You may be opposed to government mandating masking, but you may determine on your own that masking in a pandemic is a prudent thing to do and decide to do it. So in a lot of ways, they don't seem to be very in line with what I used to hear as traditional libertarian principles of personal freedom in social and sexual areas of one's life. So this very much seems to be part of this culture war thing that the Republicans are using. And they hear what they're trying to do is associate Chase Oliver with the Democrats in order to make sure that he's competing with Joe Biden rather than with Donald Trump. And anybody in the Libertarian Party that would be inclined to support Chase Oliver, seeing something like this or whatever else they're doing to promote this point of view, would probably migrate to Trump rather than Oliver, right? If they believe any of the stuff that they're trying to sell. So there seems to be concerted effort within the party, as far as I can tell, to get to skew things so that the party cannot be a threat to Donald Trump. I suspect there's operatives behind this. Now let me give you one more article about this whole all these shenanigans going on. This is an odd one. I don't know exactly what to make of this. Let's open it up here. I think this was from the Independent Political Report by Joseph Buchanan, that the Libertarian Party 2008 vice presidential candidate Wayne Allen Root, who I don't recall ever having heard of before, he claims to be the mastermind of inviting Trump to speak at the convention, and with the intention of making the Libertarian Party commit suicide, that is, to destroy the party from within. Now, Buchanan, the author of that piece, was able to see the video, even though when I tried to find it, I clicked the link that he had with his article. It didn't work. And I searched on the web for about 15 or 20 minutes, and every instance where I could find videos of this guy, Wayne Allen Root, the June 6th episode where he said these things, or allegedly said these things, was not accessible to me. So anyway, I've highlighted some things here where this is what Buchanan is quoting from Root's video, that he said it started with a text to President Trump, and he was this was his game plan. He wanted Trump to speak to the Libertarians in order to bring the Goldwater Reagan conservatives over to Trump, and rather than to their candidate. So the actual delegates at the convention, he says, are like 51% hardcore woke left. Again, this woke phobia among these people. To spite Trump, the next day, these woke left libertarians, which those I usually don't see those words together, seems oxymoronic, or at least, without the oxy, said they would all go crazy, get drunk, and do something stupid, which is what they did. They, to stick the finger in the eye of the others, they nominated a gay presidential nominee, again emphasizing that gayness as some thought. So the Libertarian Party committed suicide by doing that, and as he says, no conservative in America will now vote for the Libertarian Party, and the Libertarian Party will now only steal Democratic votes from Biden, and he congratulates himself on such a brilliant strategy. Now, I don't know how much of this is really this guy's doing, or if he's claiming credit for it after the fact, or if he thought he had something to do with it, but there were other players who were much more influential in getting Trump. I don't really know what this is all about. But I could say this repeated idea that by getting Oliver to get him on the ballot in places where he's going to take away votes from Biden, and take him off the ballot where he's going to take away votes from Trump's, does not make any sense unless you're targeting swing states. McCardle, the chair of the party, was talking about red states and blue states, but just think about it a second. A blue state traditionally votes Democratic. So if Oliver's on the ballot in a blue state, and even if he took votes away from Biden instead of Trump, he's probably not going to take away enough votes to help Trump win, especially since some libertarians who might support Trump will vote for the libertarian candidate. And I got to emphasize here that whatever goes on at a minor party convention or a major party convention, the delegates do not necessarily accurately represent the view of voters who affiliate with that party or who traditionally vote for that party. There'll be a lot of libertarians who don't really get very active in the process of choosing delegates to the convention or voting at the convention or any of that. They just wait and see who the candidate's going to be, and then they'll vote because this is Libertarian. There's a lot of independents who don't pay a lot of attention to the inner politics of the major parties, but they tend to generally go with one party or the other. So voters don't always behave the way that activists within the party do. So we don't know how Libertarians are going to go if they have Oliver on the ballot or not. But again, if you're in a red state, if you're in a blue state and Biden's ahead, Oliver on the ballot may take votes away from Trump, and he's probably not going to get enough from Biden to make any difference in the outcome. Now, in a blue state, if you don't have Oliver on the ballot, which is what McCardle was aiming at apparently, that means this is, what did I say, blue state? In a red state, if Oliver is not on the ballot and it's just Trump and Biden and it leans traditionally Republican, how does he help Trump? The state's already likely to go Republican. He's going to take away votes from Biden in that state? Or no, he's not on the ballot, so he's not going to take away votes from anybody. So even if he was on the ballot, how would it hurt Trump? Because Biden, it just doesn't make sense to me. You'd have to be targeting swing states where the vote between the two major parties is very close. And then you can talk about putting on someone on the ballot if they might hurt or help one candidate or the other. Anyway, all that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So, but clearly something is afoot in the Libertarian Party that's factionalizing it and splitting it apart. And I think it's deliberate because they have this idea that it's going to help Trump. Not everybody that's part of this effort probably knows what's going on behind the scenes, and I don't really know either, but this is my political instinct that Republican operatives who, in the past, I know they've operated in this kind of a sneaky way. Democrats do this too, by the way. They're trying to destroy the Libertarian Party so it won't be any threat to the Republican candidate. Finally, okay, since we've mentioned the major party candidates, let's hold our nose and do one more thing with this. Now, last week I said that the state legislature in Ohio, which was balking at moving their deadline for a candidate to request being on the ballot in that state, was balking at changing the deadline for Biden because the Democratic Party had scheduled their convention too late to meet that deadline. Well, I predicted that the governor would sign the bill that the legislature did recently pass, and indeed, on the same day that I uploaded and did my video, the governor did sign that bill. So Biden's now guaranteed a place on the ballot in every state, as well as the District of Columbia. But the Biden campaign, as you see here, this is from the Ballot Access News, they're still planning to nominate Joe Biden by virtual roll call in advance of their convention, even though they're not in danger of not meeting the deadline in any of the states to get him on the ballot. So why the heck is this? Now, I said in my previous episode that I was speculating why would this, and then I said it would make a difference how they made this decision. Now, there's different speculations on why they're doing this, some having to do with he wants to avoid demonstrations, interrupting the procedures, but what is he going to do, not be at the convention at all? I think what's really going on here is that they're afraid something will happen at the convention to replace Biden with another candidate. They want to get Biden officially nominated as soon as possible in order that if anything goes wrong, like his debate performance or public displays of his increasing disabilities due to old age or whatever else is going on with him, or there are delegates who were elected by state party by people voting for no candidate or whatever it was, no delegates, no candidate, delegates pledged to no candidate. Sorry, I'm losing my thread here at the end, running out of steam, I guess. So why are they doing this? They don't want to have those delegates standing up and giving speeches about Biden's policy about Israel and Gaza. They don't want to have that kind of disruption. They don't want to have a runaway convention, which would be hard to happen. But they are so afraid of having this vote happen at the convention that they're deciding to do it ahead of time and make sure they get it locked down. That's what I think. They're really afraid that Biden won't be able to do that. Something's going to happen to make people even delegates to the convention and party operatives who can make a difference here, like maybe the super delegates who are political party bigwigs, are going to have fears about nominating Joe. So let's get it done fast before that happens. Now, why would they want to stick with Biden, even though lots of people aren't happy with him? I'll let you speculate on that, and maybe with the Hunter Biden trial, some of that will come out. It seems like there was an article just today in Politico, I think, that there were some connections not between Joe Biden, but between a lot of his aides and the dirty stuff that Hunter Biden was dealing with. Maybe they're trying to protect themselves. I don't know. Again, speculation. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching. Hope you got something out of this. And as we go forward, we'll be seeing what's happening with those candidacies and covering any surprising developments. Again, Alan Zundel, Political Dharma. If you like the show, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe, etc., etc. See you next week. Maybe sooner. Who knows? All right. Thank you very much.
With ease, I see the chains are breaking. We gained our focus, the moves we're making will prove to determine our self-worth as a passenger on this vehicle Earth.